So, shall we do a video which demonstrates just how little common sense I have, especially when it comes to Pat McGrath labs? I don't know if anyone's interested in this video because people have probably already moved on from this collection to the Love collection, and on top of that a lot of you probably already had the original Voyeuristic Vixen quad, but I thought just in case you're curious we're going to do a video talking about the Lunar New Year collection. This Lunar New Year collection came with Voyeuristic Vixen quad in red lacquer packaging. We're going to talk about it in a bit. But the reason that I decided to go ahead and purchase anything from this collection to begin with was this freaking lipstick. She has done red lipstick for Chinese New Year before, and she has also done eyeshadow palette for this celebration previously. But this is ironically the first time that I personally felt compelled to participate in this collection, because when she released Golden Opulence 3 years ago or so, I was like, these are not really my colors, I think I can easily skip this palette. And then the previous set, I think it was a set of a liner and a lipstick, one of the Elsons, and at the time I thought this looks gorgeous, but it's one of the Elsons, so there's a really high chance that I have something really similar. But then when she revealed the lipstick that comes with this collection, both visually and in terms of color, I thought, oh my gosh, I need to own this. And then, I don't know about you, but from there it snowballs into, but can I really just order that one thing? That's just a little sad, ordering a whole thing, a whole package from Pat McGrath just for that one lipstick. And honestly, when I saw the red lacquer packaging on the Voyeuristic Vixen quad, something snapped in my brain and all common sense flew right out the window. It just lured me in so bad that I couldn't give less shits that it's Voyeuristic Vixen, and I already have Voyeuristic Vixen. Now luckily I like that quad, I use it a lot and I travel with it, so it's not as if I was purchasing something that I wouldn't even get a lot of use out of, but I want to tell you that it is still really stupid. At least I think it's really stupid, and I've never done this before, to buy something you already have just for the limited edition packaging. This is the first time that I have, slipped down that slippery slope, and I hope it's going to also be one of the very few times that I fall for that kind of marketing. I don't want to blab for much longer because I cannot wait to show you the lipstick and honestly to put it on again, because yesterday I used it for the first time and I fell instantly in love with it. Let's talk about it. So let's first talk about the component. This is the good old luxurious packaging that you're familiar with from her original line of Matte Trans and Luxe Trans lipsticks, but then in this beautiful red packaging. And not only is the packaging red, but I feel like the shade of red really reflects what's inside as well. So aside from that, you still have some classical, features of this component, which is the little golden lips, the golden detail here. But what's also really beautiful, I don't know whether you can see, you have these little almost rays of sunshine coming from the lips. So there is so much detail even in the outer component of this lipstick. But then you open the lipstick itself, and the lipstick is honestly, I think this is a piece of art. Look how beautiful. Look at that detailing on the bullet. I could just spend my days staring at this lipstick and admiring what a beautiful piece of art it is. Look at that. I am honestly mesmerized by this lipstick. I fell instantly in love with it as soon as I opened it and I found out how the bullet looks in real life, because I had seen the pictures obviously, but sometimes what's on the pictures doesn't really quite reflect reality, and in this specific case I feel like reality far exceeded my wildest expectations. This is just an absolute delight to look at, to apply and to wear and to just have in your purse. Anyway, I'm getting carried away. I'm going to apply the lipstick, but I also want to say that in my opinion it is also a fairly unique shade of red, and that's a lot coming from someone like me who adores to wear red lipstick, has a lot of red lipsticks, and rarely surprised anymore by undertones of red lipstick. This is really unique. I think Pat McGrath describes it as a brick red or something. I don't know that I would call this a brick red, but it is still a very interesting, sort of more subtle shade of red. Let me apply it so that you can see how it looks like. I do FYI always line my lips no matter what kind of lipstick I'm wearing, because I don't really have very well defined lip lines, and especially when it comes to brighter lipsticks, I have two left hands. I'm definitely going to color out the lines. And in case you were curious, honestly, I'm just using like good old cheapo Essence lip pencils. I think they do the job fantastically. But so here is Rouge 8 for you on the lips. I am looking at my flip screen now, and I think what you see is fairly accurate. I have sometimes a really hard time, especially with red lipsticks, because somehow cameras always change them to look more orange or brighter, or just slightly change the undertones to the point where you're like, I don't think you're actually seeing what I'm seeing in real life. But I think what you're seeing now on camera is fairly accurate to what I'm seeing in real life. And I can see a little bit where they're coming from with the brick red. There's definitely a bit of like that more subtle red brick undertone to this lipstick, but it also has a brightness to it. And the brightness is not too orange or too pink. I wore it yesterday, and in classical matte trans lipstick style, the lipstick barely moved from my lips, and I had a relatively greasy lunch. We had some leftover noodles from HelloFresh, so I took that to work with me, and it was a fairly greasy meal. And the lipstick had just like slightly disappeared, or not really disappeared, but faded in the center of my lips. But even after lunch, I think I could have just buffed it in a little bit and it would still have been fine. I did reapply because I wanted it to be full brightness and full opacity. That said, after the greasy lunch, I could have easily just buffed it in and continued on throughout my day, and it would still have looked flawless. It looked flawless all the way up until I got home after work and after my singing lesson. And honestly, I felt a little sad that I had to remove it because I am so in love with it. I don't know if you would agree, but I also think against my skin tone, this lipstick has a little bit of that like brightening quality, and it really like brightens up my complexion. But what I think would be really interesting now is to compare this shade to other shades of red, and I have a couple in mind from both Pat McGrath and Lisa Eldridge, so let's do a little bit of comparison swatching. One remark I wanted to make, because I just noticed it actually, the component on the new lipstick and that gold detailing here is actually not present on the original matte trans lipsticks. So this is like an additional, you know, luxuriously golden detail. But I have pulled out 3 lipsticks here from Pat to compare to. 2 of them are in the matte trans formula, 1 is in the satin allure formula. So let's start with the comparison between what I think is going to be maybe a somewhat similar type of shade. I feel like Fever Dream might be something quite similar to Rouge 8, but let's test it out. So I'm going to swatch Rouge 8 right here. Fever Dream actually has those very same like brick red undertones to it, but I feel like Rouge 8 might be a little bit brighter than Fever Dream, but possibly Fever Dream is the closest dupe that we're going to find for this lipstick. And as expected, to me, the shade Fever Dream leans in even a little bit more heavily onto those brick red tones, and it is just a little bit more subtle in tone. It has maybe a little bit more brown in it, whereas Rouge 8 has slightly like peachier brick tones to it, and it is a little bit brighter because of that. Next I want to compare to oh, actually this is not one of the matte trans, this is one of the luxe trans, and I think this is going to be just like a very different type of shade, but I just wanted to compare them for you so that you have an idea what kind of shade we're talking about. Sometimes you need to see something completely different to really be able to tell what you're dealing with. So this is the shade McGrath Muse, which was part of her Luxe Trans formula. And this lipstick is more like a cream matte. It's not really a matte lipstick, but it is, and that whole formula has unfortunately been discontinued. But I just want to compare the shade. So over here I'm going to swatch McGrath Muse, and McGrath Muse is like a very bright orange red, which I think you can fairly easily see on screen. It is just so much more orange and warmer leaning compared to both Fever Dream and Rouge 8. And finally, because the description of Rouge 8 actually reads to be classic red, I wanted to compare to what I would consider to be my classic red from Pat McGrath Labs, and that is the shade Elson 5 from the Satin Allure lipsticks. So the Satin Allures are her currently like satin cream formula. They're really comfortable, super creamy. They're not as intensely opaque as the Match Dress, but they're still really pigmented. So I wanted to compare also to that shade, and I'm going to swatch that right here so that you can see those much stronger blue tones that Elson 5 has compared to Rouge 8. I think now, surrounded by all these other shades, you can really see that like brick undertone coming through. Now that I have seen it swatched next to these other lipsticks, I agree that it has a very strong brick tone to it. With that said, I also want to be honest with you. I think if you have Fever Dream, you don't probably necessarily need to have Rouge 8, because I feel like on the lips, they're not going to be all that different from each other. You are going to get a somewhat brighter brick from Rouge 8, but I still get that, you know, enlivening effect against my complexion with Fever Dream, because they're very, very similar in tone. Okay, getting red lipsticks off your hand is quite the impossible task, but I'm gonna try my best here, because now I want to compare to a couple of Lisa Eldridge lipsticks. I don't think that anything in my Lisa Eldridge collection is quite like Rouge 8, so I think aside from Fever Dream, we're not really going to find another dupe here, but I think it's still an interesting exercise. So the first lipstick I want to compare to, and one that I was afraid is going to be a dupe for Rouge 8, is the shade Strawberry Shock. Yesterday when I was wearing Rouge 8, all of a sudden I thought, oh no, I actually feel like Strawberry Shock from Lisa Eldridge looks very, very similar to that. But when I swatched them next to each other after work yesterday, I was like, phew, thank goodness, nothing alike. So here you have Rouge 8 versus Strawberry Shock from Lisa Eldridge. Strawberry Shock is brighter, it's more pink, it's just an entirely different shade of red. Which once again surprises me, because you would think, how many shades of red lipstick can there ever really be? Plenty. Alright, let's swatch Rouge 8 here again. Let me swatch Strawberry Shock right here underneath it. You can clearly tell that Strawberry Shock has much more like pink, like really like strawberry tones to it, and this is so much more like that more subdued brick red type of shade. Now there is a shade from Lisa Eldridge from her most recent release that I don't have, and I always confuse whether it's called Enchantment or Entrapment, which might be similar to Rouge 8, but I don't really have that lipstick to compare to. Now the next comparison is going to be between Velvet Ribbon, my classic red from Lisa Eldridge, and probably my current favorite red lipstick in my collection. You can see wildly different colors. Let's watch Ribbon right here above Rouge 8. Again, you can see those very strong blue undertones, just like with Elson 5, completely different lipstick. And now I don't think these are going to be anything alike, but I think just for shits and giggles it's interesting to compare them. This is again one of the latest releases from Lisa Eldridge. This is the shade Duchess, which is much more of that like deeper, more burgundy, vampier, sexier reds. And I'm going to put that right here for you to see. Again, much stronger like purpley blue tones compared to Rouge 8, which leans much more on like the peachy brown side of red. And last but not least, another lipstick that I think is going to be quite different, which is the shade Dragon from Lisa Eldridge, which has very interesting like yellowy orangey tones to it. So let me put Dragon right here. I think in terms of color family, Dragon is more in the same color family as Rouge 8 compared to these other three lipsticks, but it's still an entirely different, you know, shade of red. Okay, Voyeuristic Vixen quad also comes in this beautiful outer box packaging, just like the lipstick. I absolutely love it. I'm definitely going to keep it. I actually keep most of the outer packaging of my, especially eyeshadow palettes. And this is the glorious red lacquer packaging that the new Voyeuristic Vixen quad comes in, and it is just so shiny and so beautiful and so festive, and I adore it. And this is how the quad looks like on the inside. Let me be honest with you, I think aesthetically speaking, this looks uglier compared to the original quad. Also, the original quad still has the little like raised logo here from Pat McGrath Labs. This just has the writing on it, so it feels less luxe because of that. But also, let me open the old quad so that you can see the size of the pans. The size of the pans here is just so much more proportional to the size of like the bottom of the palette, and these like smaller types of pans, sort of like so close to each other here, make this look unfortunately a little bit less aesthetically pleasing compared to this. I just think this makes sense. These pans are, you know, fitting with the proportions and the size of this palette, whereas here you almost feel like, what happened? Why is this packaging not proportional to the size of the pans? I feel like if they had just moved the pans a little bit outwards and away from each other, it would have looked a little bit better. But now they are like so concentrated on like in the center part, and there is so much like wasted space here around. I don't know why I'm holding this so awkwardly, I'm sorry. But unfortunately, I feel like the inside of this palette and the outside of this palette, while I adore the red lacquer packaging, is a step down from the original Voyeuristic Vixen quad packaging. Now, I think a lot of us were concerned, rightfully so, seeing the smaller size of these pans, that we're also going to be getting less product. But that doesn't seem to be the case, because the original Voyeuristic Vixen quad, as you can see here on the packaging, you will see here that this comes with 4.9 grams of product, whereas the new quad comes with 5.2 grams of product, which means that even though the pans here look bigger, they're probably a little bit more shallow, whereas the pans, while they look a little bit smaller here, are probably deeper and contain slightly more product. So in terms of the amounts of product, you're not really getting fucked over with the new quad. In fact, you're getting a little bit more. Right now was the very first time that I opened these quads. I put them next to each other and I'm looking at them, and I don't think they're the same thing. Okay, these are not the exact same shades. Let me put them next to each other again. So starting off with the matte eyeshadow, I feel like the one here has stronger like reddish brown tones to it, whereas this one almost seems to have like more mauve purple in it. Then moving on to this shade over here, which is one of my favorites. It is the taupe metallic shade. I don't know about you, but this seems to be so much like lighter in tone. I don't even think they're the same eyeshadow. Then this shade here, the champagne pink, also this one seems to be a slightly different tone. I feel like it is a little bit deeper. And the special shade, well, the little flaky shadow here, the shade Rosefire Nectar, I think that one may be the most similar, but we're going to have to swatch and find out. So this is the old quad, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave space between the four shades so that we can swatch the new ones next to their old counterparts. New quad. Now let's watch each shadow next to their old counterpart. It's very interesting. As soon as I dug my finger into this shade over here, I feel like it became slightly deeper. It almost as if there was like a little like overspray of glitter here. Let me swatch the matte eyeshadows a bit more intensely, because I am just really curious what's going on here, because in the pan they look quite different from each other, but when I swatch them out I actually don't feel like they're too different from one another. The most obvious difference between these quads is the taupe metallic shade over here. These are clearly two different eyeshadows. This is much more of like a cool toned taupe, whereas this is leaning much more bronzy and like warmer in tone, which means that I'm going to be keeping both of my quads because I do not want to be without this eyeshadow. I think the rest of these are pretty much the same. So what I think will be interesting now is to basically apply one quad on one eye, one quad on the other eye, and truly see the difference on the eyes. Okay, if I remember well, the matte eyeshadow from the Voyeuristic Vixen quad can be easily sheared out to work both through your crease and outer corner. So it is actually what I'm just going to stick to this quad. I'm not going to even pull out for statuesque, even though I'm very tempted to. But what I'm going to do is start off with the matte eyeshadow just in the outer corner and my crease, and I'm going to go for the old quad on my right eye, and I'm going to use the new quad on my left eye. So let's start off with the new quad. Just going to apply that here in the outer corner of the eye and start buffing it upwards. In terms of the formula of the matte, this just feels very consistent with what Pat's been giving us the last couple of years, which is that very soft and extremely blendable matte eyeshadow formula. I don't really have any complaints there. I'm going to slightly intensify here in the very outer edge of the eye, but you see how quick and how effortless all of this was. And I do really like the tone of this matte eyeshadow. I always really have, because even though it leans a little bit more on like the red maroony side, which is not my favorite side of like eyeshadows to lean on, I still feel like it has a little bit of brown and neutrality to it, and it really like grounds it, and I think it looks quite flattering against my skin. I really love this shade. I'm going to clean off the same brush real good on my microfiber cloth, and on the other side I'm going to apply the eyeshadow from my old Voyeuristic Vixen quad, because I'm really curious whether these mattes are the same. Let me clean that off a bit so that I can start buffing it upwards. Seeing these two on the eyes now, honestly, I don't think that they are different from each other. I think these are the exact same eyeshadow. I don't know why they looked so, you know, deceivingly different from each other in the pan, but once I dug my finger into them and I swatched them, I feel like they are pretty much the exact same eyeshadow. Oh my, that Zoeva eyeshadow is really starting to fall apart. I mean, it is almost a decade old, but it would be sad if I have to say goodbye to my Zoeva brushes, because I think Zoeva doesn't really make like goat hair brushes anymore. I think they've also switched to synthetics. I'm not completely sure. Completely off topic, by the way. Also, I just wanted to tell you something completely again off topic, because we haven't seen each other in such a long time, and I did speak about it quite, you know, in detail in December when things were going on. By the way, I'm just putting like my brow bone highlight, which is this matte eyeshadow from Inglot. I don't really ever show it because it's like such a boring step, but I always do that. Anyway, the news that I wanted to share with you is, let me start putting on a little bit of my NYX glitter glue while I do that. Remember in December when I told you that I had submitted paper for this really big project that I had been doing for many years, and we were submitting it to a special issue in a journal that was doing like a dedicated topic on the research that we do, and we were hoping that the review process would be smooth because we don't really have time anymore to be working on this story. Well, the paper was actually officially published a few days ago, because the review process went extremely like fast and very smooth. We had 2 reviewers, and the 2 reviewers only requested minor revision. And basically in science papers that means that you only have to make textual changes or respond to some comments from the reviewers, and you don't actually have to do experiments. If we had to do experiments, that would have been major revision, and it would have required a lot longer of a process. So I just wanted to share that despite all the sickness and January being, generally speaking, a bit of a bummer for me personally. Did actually have some of its highlights, and you have no idea how relieved and happy I am that this paper and this story is like out of the way, because I have practically not been working on it already for over a year, and it was just like this huge like boulder that I was carrying around, and I'm just unbelievably relieved that it's done. Anyway, now to the most interesting part. I'm going to start applying that metallic taupe eyeshadow, and I'm going to use a brush for that. I'm going to take this flat shader brush, and on this side I'm going to go in with the new shade. And I actually think this is a really beautiful eyeshadow. It's like a bit more of like a rose gold actually. And a part of me feels like this eyeshadow, the tone of this eyeshadow feels more like fitting with the color story of this quad than the taupe shadow that is in the original Vixen quad. While I love that eyeshadow, I always had the feeling that tonally it doesn't like 100% fit with the rest of the shades, especially with the matte eyeshadow. I always used it together with browns from other palettes because I didn't feel like it was really fitting with the tone of this eyeshadow. But anyway, let's put it on so that you can clearly see what a huge difference there is between the two shades. They're both in that same, you know, slightly powdery but very impactful and very reflective metallic eyeshadow formula. But they're completely different tones of eyeshadow, okay? I mean, this looks really nice, but for some reason I just prefer this eyeshadow surrounded with browns rather than this like more like reddish brown. Finally, I don't think there's going to be any difference, but I'm going to do the little like pink champagne shade here in my inner corners, and of course after that we're going to go in with the topper. But I just wanted to show you the like almost complete look without the topper, especially so that you can tell the difference between the two metallic eyeshadows. I'm going to finish off the look on both sides really quickly by just applying the matte eyeshadow on my lower lash line. And I'm going to apply just the tiniest bit of Rosefire Nectar over top of the metallic shade on the lids, just so you can see how that looks like. This shadow is spectacular. It is so beautiful and it immediately elevates your looks like 10 notches. But I think between the new one and the old one there's really no difference. I'm going to put a bit of the old one over here. And I think even with the topper applied, you can still see that there's like more depth and a slightly different tone of the look compared to this side where we have that like more rose goldy looking metallic shade. So on this side I have the new Voyeuristic Vixen quad, and on this side I have the old Voyeuristic Vixen quad. I am very glad that I didn't foolishly and spontaneously just give away my old Vixen quad before I had swatched it out and compared it next to this one a bit more extensively, because I actually seemed to have gained a whole new eyeshadow from this experience, because this is not the same eyeshadow that is present in the respective place in the Voyeuristic Vixen old quad. With that said, I don't know that you can still get the old Vixen quad, so it is possible that if you want that quad, this is now your only option. I hope that this was interesting and informative for you. I feel like it was a very interesting exercise for me to compare this, and I know that there can be like batch to batch differences. We've seen this before. We've seen it, I think, with an eyeshadow from Midnight Sun and Celestial Odyssey, which had the exact same name, which right now I cannot remember, but they were completely different eyeshadows. So sometimes, even if things are called the same, even if they are supposedly the same thing, there can be slight variations between the eyeshadows. So I'm quite relieved that this, let's face it, not so well thought out purchase turned out for the best, because I actually really like the packaging of this quad. I really like the tone of this new rose gold shadow that's present in here, and a part of me feels like actually it is a bit more cohesive with the rest of the color story compared to the eyeshadow that was here in the old quad. But I'm starting to repeat myself now, so I'm going to shut it now, and I'm very curious what you think about this whole, you know, video. What do you think about the lipstick? I can tell you for a fact I am in love with the lipstick. I love it so much, and I can like lovingly look at it all day. It is so beautiful. Anywho, let me know your thoughts. Did any of you actually pick up the Lunar New Year Voyeuristic Vixen quad and the lipstick? What do you think about them? Do you have the old one? Have you compared it? What are your thoughts? I can't wait to hear them. As usual, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!